Hello and welcome to the April 1st edition of the FloTrack podcast. My name is Lincoln Shrike, joined on today's episode by none other than Gordon Mack. Our email, flotrackpodcast@gmail.com. Send in questions, concerns, Venmo accounts. We probably won't send you any money, but it's worth a shot. Gordon, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Another day, another year in quarantine. That's how it feels, obviously. See all the jokes where it's not April 1st right now. It's actually March 32nd. That's what I've been hearing, because it just never ends.
March has been a bit of a tough month. April may prove to be a similar type of a thing, but hopefully we can look back at March and say this was the worst of it, and we've learned the lessons of social distancing, and we're adapting to this lifestyle and starting to make improvements. But we shall see. Gordon, on today's episode, we're going to talk about the newest Netflix true crime documentary. I know everyone's been talking about Tiger King, but they've got a new show coming out this Friday. It's got a similar title, Shoe King, Miles, Millimeters, and Mischief. So it's kind of got that 3 M's, and it's got the King in it. But it's going to be talking about Nike's racing shoes, both the Vaporfly and the Alphafly, looking at how those shoes have gained an advantage, kind of how they came to be, how Nike first conceived of those shoes, and kind of how they've flipped the running world on its head with the advantage they provide for road racers. So what's your first reaction to Nike covering this topic?
Well, at first I was surprised that Nike gave access to this topic, and that Netflix had the foresight to start following this story, almost like years back, all the way to 2016, when Shalane and Amy Hastings Amy Hastings were wearing like a prototype of the 2016 trials. They had footage from that. It had like basically start, middle, and end of this entire journey. And when they sent about like, what was it, 3 or 4 days ago, when Netflix sent us that email, because what they do is whenever there's a new documentary coming out, a lot of times they kind of do like a screener to all of the different news media outlets. And because this is a track and field related documentary, they sent it to our CEO of Flow Sports, so we got to see it, and it was really cool. I was more impressed that it happened, that this documentary was created, than anything that happened in the story, because, as you know, Nike is super tight-lipped about everything they do, and the fact that they let cameras behind closed doors to capture all this was kind of the coolest thing. And there were so many like weird moments, things I did not know. A lot of things that kind of changed my opinion about everything. Some for the better, some for the worse. But man, it took you on a roller coaster ride from start, middle, and end.
Absolutely. I mean, kind of go through the 6-part series. It starts in a Nike boardroom where a couple brazen footwear designers are kind of talking about what they can do to get a new advantage. It's coming off the heels of, or I guess a couple years removed from that embarrassing moment in Berlin where Eliud Kipchoge lost his insole, still won the race, but is embarrassing. Nike looking to kind of really do a 180 with their reputation at that point. So it's dark in the room. There's a lot of cigar smoke billowing with these designers, and they come up with this idea of making a really good shoe that a lot of people are going to buy. And it's just unbelievable to see it unfold, where they come up with, not only are they going to put carbon fiber in the shoe, they're going to add foam, they're going to make it a comfortable shoe. Ideas that really had never before been seen in the running world. And for them to do this and to see it playing on this doc, I think a lot of viewers are going to be stunned and really have an entirely new view of how Nike comes together. But not only that, we're going to go behind the scenes with Twitter users who are watching marathons and seeing how all these people are running fast in the marathon with these shoes. And they're doing it really unapologetically. We're also get behind the scenes YouTube footage of Eliud Kipchoge's 1:59.40. We can go into that more in a minute, but it's just stuff that I never thought we'd see the light of day, and it's just a credit to the documentarians who got this access and really got out the criminal world of these shoemakers that we never thought we'd get to see.
Yeah, I mean, we have like a full hour on this podcast, but I think we should kind of go, notable moment by notable moment. You talked about how it all started with the shoe mishap that Kipchoge had was it Berlin Marathon, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no one saw this, but they had cameras rolling on him after he crossed it, like when he was like kind of in the tent or not around media. And I had never seen. When you think of Eliud, he's super happy, he's smiling. He always has like that positive vibe. He was super pissed, and he was. I cursing up a storm. I thought like it was kind of cool. I mean, I was like, hey, he's a real person who can get upset. But he was like, I mean, he was like screaming at the Nike rep, like, I did not sign up for this. You need to make changes. Like, that's when he even said like 1:59 is off until he fixed this. He said that.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, so he knew about that? I was like, that made me think that 1:59 was in the works like years before Berlin. Yep. And the fact that he was always trying to cancel the 1:59 plan because of the shoe mishap, I thought that was kind of cool just to kind of see like the exposition to what actually happened. And no one knew that. No one knew that Kipchoge got pissed. No one knew that he tried to cancel the 1:59, attempt. And all because they made a mistake with the Berlin shoe, which then caused them to create what eventually became the Vaporflies and Alphaflies. Which I thought was wild.
Yeah, and I think the quote, the money quote from that scene, that Berlin scene, which it's crazy that they even had cameras there going back that far. But the money quote there was, "Fix it or I'm signing with Vibrams." So we remember the Vibram 5-finger shoes were big back then, and Kipchoge, so mad that his insoles were coming out, he's going to go to a shoe that didn't even have insoles, and they were the shape of feet. That's how dire this got, and that is kind of the backdrop to which Nike decided to conceive of this evil plot of the Vaporflies and the Alphaflies. Of course, they cover him in 2017 in the first sub 2 attempt, the Breaking 2, where they're on site there in Monza. We get interviews with some of the athletes there that were there to pace. They didn't really even know what was going on. Kevin Hart obviously doesn't know what was going on there. We get access with him. It's just really just in the same way with Tiger King, where there's just character after character after character. This is the case for this doc, Shoe King, Miles, Millimeters, and Mischief.
Yeah, it was funny seeing Kevin Hart and Kipchoge kind of going back and forth with each other during the entire Breaking 2 event. I was surprised how I was surprised like how funny Kipchoge was when he's kind of surrounded by another comedian. You think he's kind of like, quiet to himself, but he kind of like opened up, kind of had some good like one-liners back at Kevin Hart, kind of putting him in his place. Obviously, he did like the short man jokes and stuff like that, but the little dynamic between Hart and Kipchoge kind of reminded me of like the Kevin Hart, The Rock kind of dynamic that you see like in Jumanji and other typical like buddy cop movies. I was thinking like, hey man, if like Kipchoge, once he's done, when he's retired, he could look towards a career in, comedic filmmaking with someone like Kevin Hart, because their chemistry was like off the charts just in the 15 minutes during that documentary that we saw.
Yeah, if there's one thing about this doc that people maybe didn't foresee was the personality Kipchoge has. He really lets loose. One thing we find out is he's got a giant back tat, which I don't think a lot of people knew about him. Is kind of like that runner, who's that 400-meter indoor runner, the guy with the giant dragon tattoo. That's similar to what Kipchoge has on his back. So there's there's footage there that we wouldn't have seen. But as far as the shoes go, we go to Beaverton and we see them kind of blending the foam. the carbon fiber, they're conceiving of it, and there's sort of a scene where it's terrifying because Phil Knight's in there and he kind of has that evil laugh when he realizes that his employees have made a shoe that's just going to sell and sell and sell and really drum up controversy in the gigantic world that is track and field. It's rare that we get to see such raw evil, and seeing that with Phil Knight, a guy who's worth billions and billions of dollars, and knowing he's just seeing him get so excited about something that's about to really throw a wrench in the running world was, to me, unexpected. And that kind of, to see power like that and seeing it wielded without any checks and balances, it really is a good model for how the rich control things in this world.
Yeah, and when later that night, when Knight had that that completion party, where it's like, hey, we finally got the shoe. The celebrity draw that his house for that that dinner party, it was only a 2-minute segment in the series, but I mean, all the great former Nike athletes, and he had a lot of these people who you would think would be guests as workers, right? Like Ashton Eaton was around serving all the cocktails, and I was like, is that what he does? I thought, he's a great athlete, but now he's a butler for Phil Knight. Carl Lewis was the one driving the car to drop people off was doing the valet parking. I was surprised that Phil Knight has the ability to get these former, elite Nike athletes to be house workers in his mansion. I thought that was crazy. We don't know that, but now we have cameras of it. It's crazy.
Yeah. Who was the celebrity for you that you were kind of most not excited to see, but surprised to see in that clip?
I mean, Guy Fieri for sure. I mean, the fact that he was there, at he was he wasn't the head cook. He wasn't even the head cook. He was just there as the celebrity cook on the side who would just eat it and talk really loud and make people laugh. But I thought Guy Fieri was kind of the most impressive celebrity that Phil Knight had on his bankroll, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Tom Cruise being there, that was obviously surprising. He was wearing the Alphaflies and kept kind of going on about how it made him over 6 foot, which was a big deal for him. He was loving the shoes. Ellen DeGeneres, of course, was there. She was a big guest to be there. I mean, just a blowout party. It was almost like the Playboy Mansion, basically, is what that party resembled.
I mean, they even had basically, I think, almost every living president except for Donald Trump. I mean, Obama was there, Bush was there, Carter was there. I was like, whoa, man, this is Knight's got his connections. So I was surprised.
He did. Yes, absolutely. And several memorable moments. Ping pong tournament between Jimmy Carter and, it's kind of Democrats versus Republicans. So it gets a little political in there. It was cool.
And it was kind of nice hearted because they were it was friendly battles. They didn't hate each other. They were I was surprised. I mean, Carter wasn't good. He's too old to be good at ping pong. But the Obama Donald Rumsfeld back and forth, that was fun to watch. I enjoyed that. One little thing. I'm not sure if you saw this. There was a little clip where they showed a lot of a lot of these athletes kids 6-year-olds and younger. And if you look at their feet, they had, I think, toddler shoe Vaporfly prototypes on. And I was dude, Phil Knight's already one step ahead. He's not just thinking about Vaporflies and Alphaflies. He's thinking about trying to get those toddler-sized shoes, Vaporflies, so then all these kids can freaking dominate on the playground. I was like, he's thinking for year 2045, 2050 by outfitting all these toddlers with baby Vaporflies. And they call them baby flies.
Baby flies. That's perfect. It really was. It was one of the better scenes, and it was kind of, Knight. I wasn't really familiar with his demeanor, but he kind of in this party takes on a Great Gatsby type of a role. He's kind of separate from everyone, and there's a scene with him in the camera, and it's just kind of his shadow, and he's looking down on the baby flies, and he's just going, there's 4%, there's 4%, there's 4%, there's 4%. So all these kids that probably shouldn't have been at this party, you know, it's getting a little late, but they're wearing the shoes, which at that time were just prototypes about to be released, and he's just, you know, 4% advantage, 4% advantage, 4% advantage. It was startling to see that that level of confidence with you know, young children.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, basically most of the first episode was, you know, the Kipchoge breakdown when he threatened, you know, to leave Nike over to Mishap.
Yep.
Like Nike kind of coming together saying we need to fix this problem. And they had like the boardroom meetings, like you mentioned, you had the party. And then I think what really like kind of set up the next episode was when they saw when they saw like the final, like you saw like the final shoe get unveiled, and like you just see like they kind of made it. I mean, they got a little over dramatic, kind of, you know, like Iron Man. Like they kind of set it up, like they were revealing like the new Iron Man suit, but it was just a shoe, which I thought was kind of funny. But
Yeah.
when they fade to black, and then all of a sudden you just hear the sound of, you know, the commentary of the 2016 Olympic trials, and you're like, oh, that's what this was for. That's when they kind of start sneaking in this Vaporfly, Alphafly prototype into the real world, and that's when it kind of transitions to the 2016 Olympic marathon trials.
Right. And that's when they first started dropping, kind of handing out some of those false blueprints that we finally saw a couple weeks, months before World Athletics came out with their rules regarding the shoes. Their blueprints of the Alphaflies. I know this is much later than the Olympic trials, but blueprints of the Alphaflies with those 3 carbon plates, and everyone thought, oh, it's 50 millimeters of stack height, and it's got 3 carbon plates, but that ends up not being true. In fact, it was a misdirection campaign by Nike to make people think that they were making an illegal shoe, when in reality, they, in the entire time, were working with World Athletics, were in cahoots with them, you know, giving them updates and telling them what they wanted the rules to be as far as stack height and as far as carbon plate. And World Athletics was encouraging them, Sebastian Coe, on those emails saying, you know, go ahead and leak to the public that there's going to be multiple plates and the shoe's going to be banned, when in reality they knew the whole time. So it really shows you the conspiracy that goes all the way to the top of track and field. I think the sport is fundamentally going to be changed, much in the way that it kind of changed Russian state-sponsored doping when Icarus came out a few years ago. This is on that level, if not even bigger, of a fundamentally changing documentary.
Yeah, during the later part of this whole 6-part series, it did get darker and darker. You know, it was fun for all the celebrity stuff in the beginning. They kind of draw you in with that, you know, the smiles and happiness. But then, once, like you said, World Athletics got involved, and Seb Coe, when they that scene, like you said, Seb Coe's on the phone with Phil Knight, and you know, you see a smile, and they're like, "All right, what are we doing next?" And then when they zoom out, and like, I was surprised they had cameras there with Seb Coe. Maybe he was filming another documentary for something else. They might have just bought that footage or something. But when they zoom out, and Seb Coe is just like drenched in like all Nike apparel, right? Like there's just like Nike logos on every single thing in his house. Like he has like a Nike coffee cup. He has a Nike dishwashing soap. He has Nike, you know, hand sanitizer, hashtag coronavirus. He has Nike, you know, mayonnaise. Like the Nike mayonnaise. I was like, come on, like Nike, you don't need to be making Nike mayonnaise. You just need to be making, you know, shoes and apparel. But Seb is such in bed with them that he has to. I mean, every single day he makes a sandwich sponsored by Nike. He can't say no to whatever their demands are. That's what I got out of it, you know? He has I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he has like Nike tattoos somewhere that you can't see. That's if I had to guess.
Well, his house, his entire home in Monaco, which is just one of multiple homes, is actually in this the shape of a swoosh,
which is kind of cool.
which it is an architectural feat for sure, but it makes it a little tricky when he's just going around the house. He's got to slide down and getting to the top of the pivot up there, or the kind of the swoosh is difficult. It's frustrating for his family members, and it actually violates HOA rules in Monaco
Yes.
as well. But Sebco is definitely committed to this, and obviously he's very compromised. I'm not sure how he can really go back to trying to be somebody who's unbiased as the the head of World Athletics. I feel like Lamine Diack, we got to drag him out of French prison and kind of put him back on top, because we need to return some normalcy to track and field. We need to return some integrity. And I think it only makes sense based on what we saw from the documentary that the DX, warts and all, return back to the top of World Athletics, because this is a guy in Sebco who is, I think he would do anything for Nike. I don't see, we're talking about putting Nike mayonnaise on his sandwich,
Exactly.
This is a guy who can't be committed to other aspects of the sport. He always puts Nike first. It's a bad look for him. Like I said, I think the DX need to come back in power for World Athletics.
But the DX, though, they got that one footage where they kind of did like an interview over the phone with him in prison, and he said, like, this isn't anything new, man. Like, this has been happening since the Prefontaine days, like since the Waffle Iron. Hey, man, like, wake up. This is reality. Like, no one just knows until this documentary got shown, which I'm still surprised that Nike let them film this. I do think that most likely they probably lied to Nike about what they actually were filming. I think, once this come out, I think Nike's going to have a statement and kind of say, like, we were lied to. They told us we were filming us for this reason. We thought it was a Serena Williams commercial. Turns out it's this giant Netflix documentary. So they're going to have an answer for when this comes out this Friday. But for us track nerds who got to see it early, man, we thought Tiger King was crazy. I honestly think this is going to be bigger than that, because obviously it involves Nike, and everyone has known someone who has worn the Nike swoosh on their body. So I just think that, we're in for a world of craziness on April 3rd, 2 days from now.
Yeah, as far as ethics go, there was a lot of hidden camera footage in this. And,
that's true.
They're going behind the scenes with the Ingebrigtsens in Norway and, acting like they're just there to provide them the shoes, when in reality they're trying to see behind the scenes of how the Ingebrigtsens are training and the advantages that they're getting from the shoe. I felt that was a little bit unfair. Do you feel like Nike will be able to kind of have a cover, because a lot of this was created with so-called gotcha journalism, the fact that it was hidden cameras and they didn't know what they were getting into? Do you think some people will be sympathetic to Nike knowing that, a lot of the cameras were, coming through off people's, foreheads, whether they were wearing Google Glass? They didn't know that this footage was, they didn't consent to this footage being made. So I just wonder if Nike will be able to get some cover off that.
Yeah, I think they'll be able to kind of deflect and be like, the good old line fake news, right? They'll probably throw one of those out there. But yeah, but you mentioned the Ingebrigtsens, like that footage is going to be a little damning for them, because it kind of shows that, there's not just three brothers. There's like, 6 or 7, and how they've been, they all have a twin, and they've been using their twins to run their prelims, which I thought was like, whoa, they've been running every final fresh because they have an Ingebrigtsen clone, basically, who runs their prelim for them. And, the Ingebrigtsen family just can't stop, with, having more of these brothers out there, and seeing these like 6, 8, 10-year-olds that are in the wings for to be the next
Yeah.
trio of Ingebrigtsens. I was like, what's going on, man? It's almost as if they grew them out of a lab or something like that, because I thought it was just three brothers, but it was three brothers all having twins, and then there's another set of three coming that will be, in the spotlight 7 years from now. I was just like, what's going on, man? They're just like a corporation, not a family.
The twins thing was surprising, but I mean, what a genius plot. I mean, obviously you still have to be fit. You have to be a good runner, but to send out your twin to run the prelim and the semis, if you're running the 1500, obviously it helps explain how Jakob at such a young age has gotten good. He's only coming in and running finals, because it turns out that his twin brother, which they, unnamed, they don't even name him. That's how serious they are about these people. They're just kind of, and you really feel sad for those brothers who haven't got the attention they deserve. I mean, these are still solid runners. These are still 335, 1310, 5,000 meter runners, but they only get to run prelims. And that's the advantage of the hidden camera there. It would seem the Ingebrigtsens are going to tumble down. That was kind of like a side plot, kind of like the Doc Antle and Tiger King, where it's like didn't really have any major impact on the story as a whole, but just you get another example of the dirtiness of track and field.
Yeah, it's wild. So obviously the entire architecture of this show is based around the shoe, but it's only really a story because of the controversy behind it. And
yes,
I was really impressed the way the filmmakers were able to capture that controversy. And you could see that it really is on the forefront of Phil Knight's mind, the controversy. He kind of likes it in a weird way. He kind of leans into it. Seeing there was like some weird room in their headquarters where there's like all these like computer screens, right? And they all had TweetDeck open and all these Twitter feeds, and they're all categorized by different types of outrage around the Vaporflies. And then he had 15 employees who would just sit around and they would, troll back. They would kind of do like a misinformation campaign where they would be pro Nike and anti Nike, and they go back and forth, and they create this crazy, controversy that then regular publics like me, you, and insert random Instagram influencer here get involved with. But the whole operation of the Twitter sphere, I thought was fascinating.
That was incredible, and not something I didn't realize how deep this ran, and it kind of reminded me. Hate to bring this up as a Sixers fan that you are, but the Brian Colangelo drama of a couple years ago.
That's what I thought.
His wife was using a burner account, but this was on a scale much, much larger. We know there's been a lot of Twitter users that have been critical of the shoes, and we think that that's kind of small beans. I mean, that's just a few angry track fans, and that doesn't represent a lot of the population. But Nike saw those people who were critical online as a serious threat enough to where they employed, hundreds of, social media mavens to get in there and defend it, and to kind of present false information to them, and to try to convince these people and that the shoes were ethical and that they were not cheater flies, as so many people had said. But going inside that room and having Phil Knight do that, and seeing how a guy who as rich as him and who's seemingly you would think wouldn't have his hands in the day-to-day, but seeing how he conceived of this social media defense campaign, fascinating stuff. He even got online for a little bit. He just showed here, I'll just create a few fake Twitter accounts, and half of them didn't even have avatars. He's just in there just hacking away and defending these shoes.
I really liked his Instagram that he made called Philly Night, which was just a bunch of fit pictures of nighttime sceneries in Philadelphia. And so it's his name, Phil Knight, but he called it Philly Night. And so, I thought he did a lot of, puns on his names for his Instagrams and Twitters and Facebook accounts. I thought that was very interesting. But like you said, like it was about defending them, but they also did some like weird like offense because you need to have. I mean, there's also a business side of this, and the controversy sells shoes, right? And so I was surprised about the number of under the table cash transactions that Nike gave to other elite runners to kind of shit on the shoe, right? I was surprised at that. That like this goes beyond just a Nike circle. They were trying to pay under the table some like top elite athletes to shit on the shoe so then they could defend themselves, which then makes more clicks and more, you know, more sales. I really wish that they would show who these people were, but I think legally they weren't able to. So they had a lot of like, but they had video of it. They said to like blur the face. So, and it was both men and women. They were on both sides. So I was surprised. I feel like I could figure out who some of these non-Nike athletes were that were paid to shit on Nike, because you know the blurring job was a little sketchy. And I think once this series comes out, people are going to still frame those blurred photos to see which athletes were kind of taking Nike money under the table.
Well, fan theories, it's going to be a fun type of a thing. But yeah, you never would have thought like athletes bad mouthing it. They were actually in the back pocket of Nike, right? You would have thought, oh, all these athletes that are condemning the shoe, they're obviously against it. No, it turns out, and it makes sense in hindsight, you know, it's like they have this eagerness to talk about how bad for the sport the shoe is. And we're like, we get it, but like just run the race at a certain point. But no, they're like, you know, getting hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get out there and say, this shoe is so unfair and gives you such an unfair advantage, which, you know, you do think about it and you're like, if you're a viewer at home or you're just like a hobby jogger and you're like, wait, this athlete for another brand is saying how good the shoe is. Of course you're going to want to buy that. And that, when that hit me and when we saw that scene, it's like, well, duh, that Nike was paying those athletes to say that. And because everyone, sense. Right. Oh, sorry. Right. No, well, I mean, it totally makes sense.
Well, like they had scripts, right? They had like Netflix had like, you know, was doing an investigation and they showed like that there was scripts sent to all these athletes with keywords, key buzzwords to use, like unfair advantage, like I'm competing against more than just an athlete, you know, all these different things. I was like, man, they had it all down to a T of how to kind of like, you talk about a marketing campaign. Now this is a marketing campaign when you're paying athletes under the table to shit on your product, which then as a result of reverse psychology and then sells more product. I was, dude, did you were in the series, weren't you? Because I mean, I thought the tweet that you sent when you were tweeting the Vaporfly room at the Olympic trials, they were filming then, and you were in it.
They were filming that. Yeah, they were filming. Yeah, that. I mean, well, I knew when Kevin and I went down there during the Olympic trials that we probably weren't going to be allowed to be in there. And you know, on our video, my video, the inside the this week in Olympic marathon trials, talk about how we went down to the room at the Georgia Convention Center and we're kind of greeted by a seemingly like unknowing security guard. Didn't really seem like she had a clue. We were like, hey, what's in there? She's like, I don't know, but you can't go in there. And I took a photo and she said, you can't take a photo and leave. And then a guy showed up. Well, it turns out we were being filmed the whole time. And that was actually a Nike employee, a Nike executive sitting in that chair. She was in disguise, but she knew all along, and she had some facial recognition technology going on, you know, with her phone, and she was recording secretly and was taking stock of who was trying to get into the room. So they got all my data. They came to my door several weeks later. You know, they were kind of intimidating me at my house and trying to keep me quiet from what I saw. So yeah.
Did they force you to sign a release like to Netflix just so they could use that footage?
You know, they didn't, which is kind of why I'm considering litigation. I didn't know I was going to be on camera. I didn't consent to being on there. I just don't know. kind of like in Tiger King, where people are scared to go up against Carol Baskin and her money and her influence and what she could do to people legally. I'm scared, obviously, to go up against Nike. Like, even if I think what they did was illegal, like, do I really want to put myself in that type of position? I mean, I don't have those type of resources to go up against Nike and their team of lawyers. Anyways, that's kind of beside the point. I was talking about, cameos like I'm in the series, Ellen DeGeneres, Guy Fieri. Episode 4, though, it starts out with, I guess, someone it's not overly surprising to see in the series, but given how secretive this person is, starting at Jerry Schumacher's house for episode 4, like, what did you think of that, and kind of help the viewers go through that scene, and what was your reaction to that?
Well, the first 10 to 20 minutes of that entire episode, it's like a Jerry Schumacher show, right? It's kind of weird. They kind of go off topic in a weird way. You think it's like he's like, you could tell the producers are trying to get him to talk about the Vaporflies and Alphaflies and all this stuff, but he just wants to dive deep into his training and kind of just say, hey, just talk about all of his secrets of how he's able to, have all these top elite athletes, what they do on their off days, on their on days. And you got to see a full, I mean, it was in a 20-minute period, but you got to see a full week's worth of workouts the club were doing. And it was super unfiltered. He was just giving his hot takes on what he thought of NOP, his hot takes, what he thinks on all the other coaches. They showed a list of all the college kids he's currently eyeing to sign in 2021. I was dang, man, all of this stuff, all this cool content that track geeks would love is all in the series. And I was like, man, Schumacher really opened his doors. For someone who doesn't do interviews, he gave away all of his secrets. He gave away his 20 years of secrets in just that 20-minute segment. And I think there is going to be a spinoff where it's just going to be a vlog style Netflix series featuring Jerry and the Bowerman Track Club. And I can't wait to watch that. So that's going to be cool.
The thing that I can't believe I was blinded to for so long was that really one of the primary designer of the whole scheme of all the shoes was Jerry Schumacher himself, which, I mean, makes sense. Look at the guy's last name. It's Schumacher, which is shoemaker, how did we not see that? Did we really, were we so dumb to think that was that guy's real last name? And he was, not trying to just hide behind the scenes as a coach of this famous track team. No, this guy, in reality, that was all a cover for him, being the coach of the Bowerman Track Club, so that he had access to be on Nike's campus and to be in the lab making these shoes that he knew were going to give his athletes and other Nike athletes across the world this advantage. People were going to complain about that advantage, and he was going to profit big time along with Nike overall. But the guy really not so much of a coach, more so a kind of this evil designer that was able to do this for so long by having this sham career that everyone bought into. Everyone said, Jerry Schumacher's this great coach. And, part of the thing is he doesn't talk to the media. He doesn't talk. Well, he doesn't talk to the media because he doesn't know anything about coaching. The guy is a shoe genius, and that's what was revealed. I just can't believe we didn't see that all along. The guy's name is Schumacher. How did we miss this?
I mean, I would disagree with you a little bit. I do think because he spent his entire life designing shoes, he knows a little bit about running. And yes, he is using, running for dummies as kind of a side check for his workouts that he writes for Shelby Houlihan and Center, all them.
Sure.
But at the same time, he does add a little bit of his own flavor, so we can't take away all the credit from him. But when you talk about the Shoemaker thing, it was kind of cool when they did the whole tradition, the family tree of Schumachers. And they kind of showed the old school photos of how this has been, in multiple generations of shoemaking, and kind of started with has descendants all the way down to the first shoe that was designed in the 1400s or something like that. I don't remember the year. I could be off by
a couple 15th century,
yeah, 15th century. And you see like family after family kind of passing it down of like designing the shoes. I mean, people don't realize this, but like it was a Schumacher uh, cousin who actually, you know, sold the waffle iron to Phil Knight. Like that's
Mhm.
what's crazy. It all started with them, and it's kind of cool. Like looking in their house now, there's like shoe drawings in crayon by all of his kids on the refrigerator. But yeah, I mean, I think you're being a little harsh saying he's not involved in the coaching as much. I still think he is a little bit. You should give him a little bit of
Sure.
credit, but you're right in saying that his main job is the shoemaking, and it, you know, and all because he's kind of born into it. It's like royalty, right? You just like if you're a Schumacher, you got to make shoes. Like that's just what you got to do.
Absolutely. And he comes out looking pretty good off of this whole series. Not only is he, still the coach of Bowerman Track Club, and he's still a shoe designer. Because again, these shoes are legal. Like this doesn't cast Nike in a good light, but it shows how deep this conspiracy ran, and ultimately, like, the government has no jurisdiction on Nike, their company, and when the governing body of World Athletics says these shoes are legal, like they're going to be legal. It's just, I think one of the things about this is it looks like all other running shoe companies are going to be bankrupted off this. There's not going to be any more Hoka, Adidas. Everyone sees that these shoes are, you finally see it laid bare. Like these shoes provide a gigantic advantage, an unfair advantage, but an advantage that's very real. So I think we're going to soon see no more Hoka, no more Adidas, no more Saucony, no more Asics. All these brands are going to go away, and Nike, the monopoly it looked like they were going to have for so long, well, it's finally coming, and it's a result of these all-powerful shoes. So, wow, the sport's going to be changed forever after everyone sees this documentary, and it's going to be weird when the only running shoe available is Nike.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, it's kind of sad, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
like you like the you like where the sport has been going for the hundreds of years it's been, and then now here like on April 1st of 2020 it's pretty much all coming apart, which is kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I
I mean,
mentioned at the oh, go ahead.
oh sorry, what do you say?
Well, I mentioned at the top there's a scene where they go through the footage of Eliud Kipchoge's 1:59:40 marathon, and there's some serious enhanced footage and it's kind of the one of the lingering questions off of the show, because we see the process, how the shoes are made, but there is serious evidence that Kipchoge's Alphafly that he wore also contained an engine, a motor in it. And
Yes,
it's of course
like
not proven, but it really does look like there's an engine inside his shoes.
yeah, they're called micro motors, and they kind of did a
Mm-hmm.
whole little scene with this startup in Silicon Valley where they're designing these micro motors for like different uses, and a lot of it's for kitchen appliances and like little trinkets that people use in day-to-day life, like
Right.
a micro motor in a watch or something like that. But
Yep.
to put the for Nike to buy that startup and then tell them stop what you're doing, only make micro motors for shoe heels. That's when I was
Yep.
like, wow, they have the money. I mean, what did they sold for, like $1.8 billion, and for a
Right.
micro motor? I was like, damn,
Yeah.
Nike's got
Yeah.
the cash.
Yeah. They paid cash for that. That obviously was an easy transaction for them. But a lot of people, have talked about the carbon fiber plate technology as
It's the
being
micro motors,
mechanical
man.
doping. Yeah, it is. It's the micro motors that makes all the difference. And I know the Alphafly was just starting to get released before the world was put on pause by this pandemic. But when we do return to racing, the micro motors are certainly going to take over. And Nike owns that technology. They patented that technology, and I just don't see how any brand could catch up. I mean, we mentioned that they bankrupted all of them, but you assume some ambitious people will try to counter, will try to come back from this, create new brands. But when you have the micro motor technology and you have control and no other brand can really put that in, I don't, how is anyone expected to catch up? And I'm curious, Gordon, off of this, watching this as somebody, a third party, somebody who's not involved in this at all, like, will you be wearing Nike shoes going forward?
I mean, I kind of have to, right? Because you saw
Yeah.
the writings on the wall. They're going to pull all non-Nike shoes from every running store. Like, they're just like Foot Locker is just going to be called Nike Locker. Like, all these local running chains, like these local running stores, they're just going to be stocked with Nike. So the only shoes I can wear that are not Nike are the ones I currently own, and they've already have kind of wear and tear on them, right? So eventually, like, the old dollar bills, they're just going to be run out of circulation because they're all going to just be. I mean, if you currently have a non-Nike shoe that's brand new, don't wear it because that's going to be a collector's item like 5 years from now. So, fortunately, I don't have any brand new non-Nike shoes. But if I did, those things are going to be like the value of like the Pokemon era from like the early 2000s. Like, that's what's going to be like. You're like, if you have like a 2020 edition of a Hoka or a 2020 edition of an Adidas, that's like having a holographic Charizard right now because those things are going to be rare 5 years from now.
Yeah. To put a bow on all this, so many characters, a lot of cameos, as we mentioned. I just want to ask you, who do you think comes out looking the best from the series, and who comes out looking the worst of all the people that appeared on the doc?
Good. I mean, that's a hard question, right? Because there's a lot of layers to that. There's two. There's the best and the worst layer. So for me to kind of
it's 2 layers,
pick 2 things, that's a lot of layers to go through. But I think who comes out the worst? I mean, I think you'd have to say, Sebco's brother. Because
Alistair Coe?
Yeah. Because like he kind of took it too far with the Nike thing, right? I mean, he obviously lived in the Nike only house. He had all the Nike tattoos, but he was kind of like weird. Like he only talked about Nike, and it was kind of like he probably could only go one sentence without saying the word Nike. He changed his name to Nike. He changed everything. So it's just like kind of weird, and I kind of feel sorry for him. Like, I feel like he's kind of just gonna just turn into a Nike. Like, I think that's what, he's just gonna turn into a giant Nike swoosh one day. I think Sebco's brother, who now is named Nike, I think he looks the worst because he kind of just literally turned himself into Nike.
And I ended up feeling sympathy for Nike, just as a guy that's been caught up into it. He was always kind of living in the shadow of his brother when Seb was running all those fast times back in the 80s. And the guy just wanted to be in this elite world. So when the opportunity came for him to really dedicate himself wholly to Nike, when these shoes were coming out, he jumped at that chance. But now, like an addict, he cannot shake himself from Nike. The guy is
it's like a drug.
It's like a drug. I mean, the swoosh is something that Nike is not going to be able to give up, and I don't know if the resources are going to be there for him to enter a rehab facility, just given how closely associated he is with the brand. I just don't know if he's going to be able to survive coming off of this. And Seb's busy with his day to day and can't necessarily provide him with the sport. So you do feel sympathy for him. I just was going to keep going with my question. I mean, who do you think comes out looking the best?
Who do you think comes out looking the best?
I think Phil Knight, I mean, in this, he
Really?
looks pretty good. Yeah, I mean, you certainly, everyone has their issues in this show, but I think, you know, Phil Knight is clearly a guy who just wants to grow his company, and everyone else is guilty by association, of course. But yeah, I think someone for him who's just trying to live this capitalist dream and destroy all these other brands, you feel for him. I mean, this is a guy who's lived in the shadow of Bill Gates, a guy who's lived in the shadow of Elon Musk for too long, and you realize that when you see the scenes, you know, of him as a young billionaire, kind of getting bullied by those guys, and you know, seeing like, hey, them sending them, you know, the Gates sending him and Zuckerberg sending him like hateful emails, like you only have 4 summer homes, and really seeing the pain on Knight's face and seeing that this was his play to get up with the super billionaires club and not just be like a guy that's worth like 50, you know, no, he was only worth like 10 billion before this, but this puts him up into that 50 billion bracket with Zuckerberg, with Gates, with Musk. And finally getting to, like, you know, push back on them for being such snarky guys for so long. You feel good that this shoe and these shoes have allowed him to kind of return the favor to his bullies.
Yeah.
And it did allow him to, you know, build that that aging generator where you're able to like de-age yourself. So what age is Phil Knight now? What is he? Like he's 60s,
well, he's in
70s?
his 80s. He's in his 80s, but I think but you know, he was able to return himself to basically, you know, it's still in the process, but you know, he's unofficially like in his 40s now. So he was able to purchase that was a $20 billion purchase, the anti-ager, the aging reverser. So we're
gonna have like another like 50 years of Phil Knight.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fruits of his labor here, helping to bring about this shoe. And now he can finally afford the things that only the super rich have been able to get access to before. So finally, Phil Knight, he's not just kind of rich, he's super rich. And that's all thanks to this series of shoes, the Vaporfly and the Alphafly.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
Man, what a series, man. I can't wait till this comes out. Yeah, this is kind of going to put the world on what's world on its heels? Yeah, heels, right there. On
there you go.
Of the shoe, little pun there. But yeah, I what rating do you give it? What's the review? How many stars out of a 5-star system?
Yeah, I'd give it 4. I think they spent a little bit too much time on maybe storylines that weren't necessarily pushing the plot along. You know,
there's like that 30-minute scene where they were just playing Candyland. I was like, this has nothing to do with anything. And it was like, no, Phil Knight plays Candyland with The Rock and also, you know, Elon Musk for some reason. I don't know. But yeah, the Candyland scene was weird. I agree. Yeah.
It's entertaining to see these celebrities like living their day-to-day lives, but there was a lot of scenes, this is why I give it a 4 out of 5, that just didn't make a whole lot of sense. We went into behind the scenes of the Peloton commercial, the famous one where the guy gives the wife the Peloton, and that didn't necessarily make any sense. I mean, it did when you also found out that was ultimately another scheme by Nike, but we weren't told that until the end. So we're like, why am I seeing behind the scenes of this incredibly misogynistic Peloton commercial? A lot of things like that were just confusing, and things were coming in all over the place. It kind of seemed like they just took all their footage and just put it into a timeline and slapped some music under it. But intriguing nonetheless. And I think viewers are going to be fascinated. I give it 4 out of 5. And it's a must watch, and I think you're going to be coming back to it over and over and over again, because there's just so many details that you can miss upon the first watch, and it just opens the cupboard behind Nike and their evil schemes that they employ to try to crush competitors and to make the best running shoe possible.
Yeah, and I'll give it a 4.5 out of 5. The reason I give that extra 0.5 is because I really enjoyed when they got basically all of the past greats in track and field who are retired now, like Michael Johnson, Ashton Eaton, and they had them all do that crazy like YMCA routine at a Coachella, which I didn't know happened, but seeing a bunch of Nike greats doing the YMCA on the Coachella stage with Kanye West like rapping over it and like kind of, you know, saying like, hey, I'm going to turn all my Yeezys into Vaporflies. I thought that was kind of cool. So that's why I give it a 4.5. So in together, 4.25 out of 5 is what we're going with.
Yeah, that's going to be our average. And of course, it wasn't YMCA; it was NIKE. Of course, I mean that fit naturally in NIKE.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So
weird scene,
4.25.
4.25 out of 5.
That's the exact percentage increase that the shoes make. What are the odds? 4.25%.
Everything is coming together, and I think fans of the sport are going to be blown away. And you know, just like the shoes have changed people's performances, this is going to change the perception of the sport probably forever. Incredible piece of work. I applaud the filmmakers and so glad this got made. And so, yeah, check out the release on our site as we kind of discuss what's upcoming. And then obviously, you know, Fridays when this drops on Netflix, it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. Shoe King, Miles, Millimeters, and Mischief. Only on Netflix. Today's April 1st, so this will be debut 2 days film April 1st. So, yeah. There you go.
There you go. All right. Well, reminder, you can email us, email the show, FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. Let's see. Is it you and Kevin tomorrow on the show?
Probably.
Right? I think that.
We'll see.
Probably. Yeah. All right. We will see everyone tomorrow. Have a good day. All right. I think